Welcome to Coffee with the Councilors. Shh. Welcome to Coffee with the Councilors. Today we have myself and our new counselor, Deanna Hammond here. And we'll talk more about what the schedule will be in the future towards the end. But first, we're going to go around the room, say your name and say what issue you'd like to talk about or that you have a question about that we might or might not be able to answer. So let's start with Lucinda.
I'm here as an observer unless something comes up that I'd like to comment on.
Okay, that's great. And Lois?
Just the usual, wanting to know that we're on track with the wall.
About the wall.
I'm sure that Daniel can give us an update. Look at the beard.
Yeah.
Wow.
Daniel, they have these.
Mountain man.
Yeah. Winter comes spring, I'll start shedding pretty fast.
This is your winter cut?
Yeah, my winter coat.
And
I am,
say your name first, so because not everybody knows who.
And I'm into May Ballot Initiative 101. I'm studying about it, so I'm doing some research. So
Good, okay.
So,
Your name for everybody's,
Johnson,
yeah.
so I'm here to listen and observe, especially because we got new council members. And then I have some questions about the new city hall and the police station.
Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Robert Corres. I'm just here to sort of learn more about the city and the issues and the interaction among folks.
All righty, Mr. Tulip.
Greg Tulip, I guess I'm curious, is anything new on the Coos and where that is from the last council?
Okay. Derek? Are you here to observe or to ask a question? Okay. Okay. It's name and,
And I just heard observe as well.
The big ask, just here.
okay. And who do we have online? We have Betsy. Are you here to observe or to ask a question?
Well, probably just to observe, but every now and then something pops into my mind and I'll raise my hand and wave it wildly and
That's great.
call on me. Okay.
Okay. And Nancy? Probably observe. Well, we'll
She's
see.
muted.
Yeah, the only thing I want to know is, Rusty, are you doing this live YouTube as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I can't seem to get it, but I will try. But I don't have any other questions. I'm just here to observe.
Okay. We're here to watch and see if there's any way I can fill your shoes.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job. Both you and Deanna will do a wonderful job.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with Lois. You wanted to talk, you had questions about the wall.
Well, the last I heard, which was way back in November, there's a court date the end of February, but then there was a question of whether they were going to resolve it amicably. So can you fill us in, Daniel, please?
I haven't heard any movement on it so far, so I'm still expecting February 26th.
26th?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
February, it's the 24th,
26th.
26th. And what time is that? Do you know?
They generally start at 10 a.m.
And so this is our municipal court hearing about the wall.
Yep.
If anybody's interested. So it's a wall that's on Fifth that's been deemed to be over height. And
By 2 feet.
by 2 feet, which is quite a bit. And so there's going to be a court hearing about it unless there's some kind of settlement beforehand where the wall is lowered back to what it should be. So that's what this is about. And it's been going on for a long time.
Year and a half?
Yeah.
About right?
That's-
Year and a half?
Yeah. Till it's finally supposed to end up in court.
I guess I do have a question for Daniel. Do you know why the owners are disputing it? Or challenging it, maybe is the right word, I don't know.
I don't know. I can't speak for them.
I just wondered on what basis are they not complying?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard one word about it, to tell you the truth. The only time I've heard about it is in this forum.
Okay.
And so, but I'm going to try and attend the court date, so if I can. Okay, Deb, you've got a big issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am trying to understand the ballot initiative that's gonna affecting the city, and I'm a little bit confused by how it's written. So this is pretty much for Deanna. As a member of the local group, it's called Cannon Beach Together, who wrote this initiative. Can you help explain the intent of the initiative and its financial impact on the city?
I didn't write that initiative. I really can't give you any answers on that. I know I need to read into it more myself. I'm not exactly sure how that process worked. So, just because I may have been a member of Cannon Beach Together, that doesn't mean that we were all involved in that. So you might want to go to the people who actually wrote that initiative.
And do you know who that is?
It's on file.
On file.
It's on file with the city.
Bruce, maybe you could give us a little background on it.
Yeah, I can't. Have we gone all the way around?
No, I mean, this is an issue that Deb brought up, so it's her turn to talk. And so if you could give us a little background on how that initiative ended up being on the ballot.
Right, there's actually two initiatives. There's an initiative that was put out as part of a settlement with dealing with the city hall and the police station to allow them to go forward. And then what it is say that pretty much anything over, I don't know, several $1,000s, I'm sorry, about $5 million, I think it is, has to go to the voters in order to be approved for financing. And the city has filed a counter measure, and it allows us to continue on the way that we are now. And that's the council can make the decisions to be able to finance even smaller amounts or larger amounts.
So if I may add to that, there are a couple of things as Bruce is talking that I do know. It was not a part of the settlement agreement. It was not. I do know that what I do know is the initiative was filed. But I don't recall who filed that. And then the initiative, once you file an initiative and it's vetted, so any petition signatures, anything like that, comes back from the county, then it automatically goes onto the ballot. You can't stop it from going onto the ballot. And that process happened before it got dropped out of the settlement agreement. It got dropped out of mediation. And the amount, it's my understanding that the amount, and I can't, this isn't like dead set numbers because I didn't write the initiative. It seems to me that initiative says something about it's a percentage of something. And I know that I don't sound very intelligent right now, but it's about 5.9 million would be anything above that. It goes off of the annual income. So, or receipts and a percentage thereof. So, and I think it's, and the city's initiative basically just rewrites what is written, but it has a little more stronger language than what's already in code.
So is the people who wrote it dropping it?
Once an initiative is filed, you can't drop it.
Okay, first of all, it was part of the settlement agreement.
It was not.
Hmm?
It actually was not.
Well, since I was part of the settlement agreement and was there for it, I would say that actually it was something that was forced down the council's throat in order to get the school, I mean, not the school, but in order to get the city hall and the police station built, which is what we were very, very interested in getting those two projects underway because we saw them as necessities. So it was part of the whole big settlement agreement that this initiative would appear on the ballot. Otherwise, the council never would have agreed to put this on the ballot. Number one, it's terribly written it's confusing to most people. They won't understand it. And that's one of the most disturbing parts of it is because people, end up voting for something or against something when they don't really understand what the ramifications are going to be. But basically what it would do, well, I'm not sure as a council member, I guess I can, it's a legislative matter, so I think I can express my thinking on it. What it would do is make any project by the city, unless it's a dire emergency, there's an exception for emergency, but any project by the city over a certain percentage of the city budget would end up going to a vote. And one of the issues with it is the city applies for grants and low interest loans all the time to do projects, capital projects like the water resiliency is a good example. So if we had to go to if the city was awarded, let's say, a low interest loan, and you either use it or lose it with those loans. So what would happen is if we had to wait for an initiative ballot in order to approve the acceptance of this loan, we would probably lose it if the timing wasn't right. So it could really hamstring projects for the city. So the city wrote an opposing ballot, and that was part of the agreement that they could write an opposing ballot that would keep things as they are, which means that the council could approve capital projects as they do now.
Couldn't you just make that part of your plan? We want to build this, we'll send it to a vote. And then we go to get our grants and our funding.
That's not how it works because there's timing involved in those grants completely. And if you're not there for the window of opportunity, Karen, if you want to speak to that, because you apply for so many grants.
When you apply for a Business Oregon loan or a FEMA BRIC grant, you get an invitation. So the window opens and you have an amount of time to put your paperwork through to be considered for that money. It's a competitive grant, very competitive. There's many other cities that are asking for the same funds as we would be chasing. Then the window closes and you go through a myriad of steps, including interviews with the board of those agencies that are giving money. And because it's federal money, what they're looking for is municipalities that, should they be given the funds, can pull the trigger right away, because there are milestones that you have to meet in incremental spending that you're using the money. They don't want you to have money stranded that another city could have received and used, and you're not able to start your project. So I would be liable for divulging in the interview that I could not move forward until this were to go to vote. That would most likely disqualify us from this funding.
What I don't understand is you would go to the vote of the people and people say, yes, let's do water resiliency. Then you would go look for grants and money.
You
and
could.
Whether that window opened or closed, but you would already have the approval of the people to do so.
That you could get the vote, and then the following year or the year after, if you were given a invitation, you could chase that. The challenge with that, Kyle, is that when they have money that they offer, it is for a period of time. And so if we didn't pursue that, doesn't mean that money is going to be available next year after we've gone through the voting. I would just have to look for some other type of funding. Then I'd have to go back and say, are the voters okay with this level of funding? So it changes constantly. So it's kind of, when that window opens, it's an now or never. You chase it, the window closes, and they move on with the evaluation to award it. Then the next year or incremental of time, the funding and the conditions of qualifying are different. And so you're constantly chasing these different parameters. So going to vote can be quite challenging, because I would be constantly coming back to the voters saying, okay, now here's the parameters for this money I want to chase. Are you allowing it? By the time it goes to vote, the window's closed.
It'd have to be over 6 million or whatever that number is, so.
Which that number would increase every year.
We do projects that size, and then obviously.
We don't know. I mean, you can't predict that in the future.
In the past, we haven't done hardly any.
I mean, I think that, well, okay, a couple things. First of all, no other city in the state of Oregon does that, funds that way, funds their city that way. We would be the only town or city in Oregon that does that kind of funding, and through voting. And the reason for that is it essentially hamstrings your public works and your other city projects, completely hamstrings them. They can't act without a vote. The voting periods are certain periods, unless you call a special election, which is expensive. So it is a way of, I mean, I guess what I would say is if you distrust your city government so much, then elect other people. But, I just don't understand why anybody would want to hamstring the workings of the city.
What is the intent? It seems like you know a lot about this. So what is
I
the,
don't know.
well, nobody does. Who wrote this initiative? Because how am I going to find out? Who wrote this?
It was written by attorneys, the city.
If you go on the
No.
website, you can see who's, I'm sure you can.
On Canada Beach Together?
No, on the city website.
The city website, it was the city attorney wrote it.
No, who wrote the initial challenge to the initiative to have this $5 million?
Who wanted it on the ballot to begin
It's
with?
on file with the city recorder.
Do you know who?
I don't know who actually, sat down and wrote it. And I think that so there's a couple of issues. One, the reason that the city is challenging it with an alternative ballot is that and I'm reading from the city's posting, the measure contains certain ambiguities, such as lacking definitions for emergency debt and government activity revenues, what constitutes a project, and whether an affirmative vote, rather than just a vote, is required to issue debt over the debt approval limit. Future action will be needed to clarify these ambiguities. So there's problems within the way that it was written, that it's not administratable. And then there's the question of whether or not it's necessary to tie a vote with something that is easily challengeable because of the ambiguities. Is it easy to, or does it make sense to allow a vote to move forward that would tie the city's hands when you're trying to do a project as important as water supply resiliency?
Okay, well, is there anything on here? Because I'm sorry.
Well, no, your first question though is, do we know who wrote the initial ballot? And I don't know either, but I'm saying that the reason that the city followed up is there's a lot of ambiguities in it. And it seems it would be tying up more than just if you want to do a water resiliency project, just go ahead and put it out and see if people want to do a water resiliency project. But, you know, and going back to Karen's point, we're going after the grant funding for the water resiliency project that exists right now. And if we were to do one of these votes, the next vote that we could do would be, I believe, November.
Wow. Okay, so that brings me to, okay, what constitutes an emergency that's written in here? I don't think any voter in this city is gonna understand this because I can't get my head around it.
It neither, that's one of the problems is that the emergency is not defined.
Right, and I think the Gazette's doing an article on it right now. Everybody's like, whoa. Anyway,
But it was part of the settlement agreement.
It wasn't.
Yes, it was. Deb,
I
I
was-
was there.
I was, so what, actually,
You were not on the, no, you were
So
not in
what-
the executive session
So-
where the settlement
so
agreement was
should you be
done.
talking about that here? Probably not. And
okay,
I
let's
think,
talk
I
about
think
this.
that
I'm not talking about.
I
it. I'm
think
saying it was
that-
part of the agreement.
it was not part of the agreement. And I actually, I was involved in that process and it was not part of the agreement. The initiative was filed. It went through the normal initiative processes, just like I explained earlier. And it was put on the ballot because all of the petitions and everything passed. So it will go to vote in May. But ultimately, it was not part of the settlement agreement.
Do you fully understand the impact of this May ballot initiative will have on our critical infrastructure projects? So let me just, I wrote an article on this, so I do know about this. It's concerning what I heard at the retreat. Projects can be delayed. So as she talked about, with jeopardizing loans and grants. And phase 3 of the water resilience program has not been completed. An old Midtown water reservoir, now I'm sure that that's over $5 million to replace, holds 1 million gallons of water and is vulnerable to even a moderate seismic event. Okay, so just as long as we don't have an earthquake between now and the time you want to vote, along with replacing this old water reservoir, the plan for phase 3 is to run seismically resistant HDPE pipe along Highway 101 to tie the north and south ends of the city together and allow the city to provide water to residents within 72 hours of a natural disaster. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of scared about running out of water. So phase 3 will cost $7 million. So the May ballot initiative will affect the completion of this project. It's my understanding the ballot initiative will effectively force the city to seek voter approval for any project exceedingly roughly 5 million and will delay completion of the crucial final phase of this project. Is this correct?
So Bruce, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
But that is the reason that there's going to be hikes in the water rates is to help fund this project. And I would also assume that a water resiliency project is not something that you can pass. That wouldn't that go to the voters any, like, if we weren't raising rates to pay for the project, wouldn't that go more out to a bond for the homeowners, for property taxes?
Not necessarily, because if you're doing a project that's in water or wastewater, you're able to, you have a revenue source, which is the rate. But if you have a project, and I'm trying to, there's something that doesn't have to do with utilities, excuse me. And, you know, it might be a Cannon Beach Elementary project, something like that. That's one that if it goes, it would go for a GO bond or a tax bond.
So a utility would go more for a tax bond.
No, the other way. The other way, it would go for a revenue bond, which means you're taking the
Utilities,
rates.
but you're using the rates to secure that
Yes,
bond, correct?
yes.
So, so there are differences there. The difference is they made the plan through the rates. So all of the people help support this project. And
Can I just clarify, we're talking about the
Please.
rates?
please,
The rate adjustment is to pay back the loans or the matching component of our grant that has already been awarded. Okay, that's the rates that you're seeing right now, is just to pay back what has already been awarded to us.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so there's so much ambiguity about all of this and it's all over and you don't know what you're talking about according to what you first said. And now you're saying you do know what you're talking about. He seems to know what he's talking about, but now they say they don't know what it's talking about. Who does know what they're talking about? And if it's a measure like that, it needs to be thrown out because the voters are gonna go, what the heck? What does this mean?
But we
And they're not
can't
gonna-
throw it out, Deb.
Huh?
We can't throw it out. It's on the ballot. We can't.
And the people need to be educated about this because I can't even, I write and I'm trying to understand and I know a lot about the water resilience program, but this is hard to get your head around. And also every time you go to an election, I also researched this, it costs a lot of money. Okay, so say City of Cannon, who pays for these elections? The City of Cannon Beach is gonna have an election now and it costs $5 per person? So it could cost $6,000 to $13,000 each election. So if city, say Seaside or Warrenton's not having an election and you split it with them, it's gonna cost, who pays that fee? Should it be Cannon Beach Together? Who initiated, who's gonna pay that fee?
It would be the city, it would come from city funds.
Cannon Beach, okay. So that's gonna add up. Two, my biggest fear in this town is a fire. And water is like super important. So, I just, the emergency factor, the safety factor in this initiative is my concern. As I'm on MRC and, all of the rescue groups. And, so I look at things medically and emergency wise. So that's what I want to know is nobody's defining, I think the ballot measure says no debt shall be incurred contrary to municipal budget law or relevant state law, nor regardless of state law shall general obligation bonds except Bancroft bonds be issued without a vote of the people. And then what is going to define an emergency in this? That's kind of where my head's coming. Who's gonna define the emergency?
There are gaps in the proposal.
There's what?
There are gaps in the proposal. For example, I think you said that the word, they reference emergency debt, but it's not defined and we don't have a term called emergency debt. So there's just things that need to be clarified.
And who's gonna clarify if we don't know what the intent was?
No one's going to clarify it's written already. It's in the ballot. We can't do anything about it at this point. We tried to write a competing measure that would counteract it, but I think that a lot of people don't understand that as well. I mean, it's hard to understand. I have trouble understanding it.
Wow.
So, I think that right now, we're kind of in a quandary because we have this ballot measure that could really hamstring the city on the ballot. And whether or not the citizens understand it or not, I mean, it's very difficult to understand because it's so ambiguous and so many of the terms aren't defined. And so it's very distressing. I agree. But you can't just take it off the ballot, we can't.
Yeah, but
do
it's
that.
it's creating more division and it's causing safety issues. And nobody seems to know the intent. Is there intent to castrate the city or what is, or I mean, that's bad. I save horses, so castrate's part of it. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking. Are they trying to?
I use the term hamstring, I think.
Yeah, okay, hamstring. I don't know what, I looked up various words, undermine. I'm trying to find words for this to write about. And it's like seriously a mistrust of the city. So what I'm seeing is I just don't understand all of that.
Well, it is, I mean, I agree with you that it is based on mistrust of the city and the way the city operates, which is,
Which is the cause of division in this town.
well, perhaps it is.
Yes. So
Or it contributes anyway.
messengers of misinformation, that's my new word. I love that. Okay. Messengers of misinformation because nobody really has the information, okay? Who has the information or understands the information is kind of needs to be factual. And for me, it's got to be factual. And after all of the discussion here right now, I'm still confused.
Yes,
Go on to the next question.
okay. Yeah, yes, you wanted to say something?
I'm sorry.
Oh, don't apologize.
All I know about this issue is sort of what I read in the Gazette and the various things that Deb posts and the history and all that. And I'm just, having had the benefit of listening to this discussion, I'm certainly more confused. So I'm going to try and ask, and I have no idea what's right and wrong. Listening to this, I still have no idea what's right and wrong. It appears that something happened in the settlement. There's a question as to what the settlement covers or doesn't cover. So one question is going to be, I haven't seen the settlement agreement anywhere. I haven't seen anything that would let me read it or anyone else read it, put it in a newspaper, let people understand it. Just bear with me. Let me give you all of it, and then you guys can think about how to respond. I don't want to, if you prefer doing it piecemeal, this might be better. It might be better not to, but up to you, whatever you want. An initiative went on the ballot, either because the settlement said that it could or didn't say that. I have different views, I get it. And then the city put up a counter initiative. And when I listened to the description of the initiative, what I think it's mostly designed to do, and I don't know, is to say over some dollar amount, the voters ought to approve stuff. Clearly, there's some mistrust of government that led to all of this. And then the city put on a competing ballot because there's some ambiguities, but didn't include the same, we're going to fix this by saying, here's the dollar and here's how we define stuff. They took out the dollar amount. So there's different agendas there, which would seem to me to just contribute to the division. There's some questions as to what we could try and get pre-approval for so we don't mess up the financing versus whether we have to wait till the time is ripe to get approval and then it's too late. So it becomes, I'm hearing lots of different agendas and lots of perspective. It's not like listening to national politics exactly. It's something similar. And then we throw in a bunch of name calling and wonder why we're divided. So I'm hoping to understand some of this as someone who's, here part-time now, likely to be here a lot more and just trying to get it.
Initiative went on the ballot because there were signatures that put it on the ballot.
Right.
That's how initiatives get on a ballot.
I understand.
Okay, but as it was not, the initiative itself was not, the response to the initiative had to do with the settlement agreement. The city could put out a competing measure. Unfortunately, you can't.
Okay. Bear with me so I can clarify and understand. And I'm sorry to interrupt and feel free to tell me to shut up and listen, whatever you want. So was the initiative was on the ballot before the settlement, and then the settlement included the right for the city to put on a competing one? I'm just trying to understand how it worked.
Okay. The initiative and the whole thing that happened with the city all kind of happened at the same time because there was sort of a joint motivation by, the putting the school on the ballot. And this initiative would have gone on the ballot, whether we had a settlement agreement or not, if they have the proper amount of signatures. That's how it works.
Okay.
But the whole thing was all sort of happened at the same time. So anything that arose out of that settlement agreement and the initiative ended up sort of being pulled into it, even though it didn't matter what we said in the settlement agreement, that initiative goes on the ballot regardless.
Okay.
The way it was.
So did the settlement agreement then give the city the right to put on a competing initiative? I'm trying to understand how the initiative in the settlement, because I heard competing perspectives, how the initiative and the settlement agreement fit together. And if there's something in this settlement agreement that talks about it, we could probably look at the language and understand it. And if it's not in the settlement agreement, it's not clear to me how it fits together or not. I'm just trying to understand.
It actually doesn't matter how it fits together. There's an
Okay.
initiative and then there's a counter initiative. That's really, what was said in a settlement agreement about how you do it or how, lawyers drafted the
I
drafted
heard
the initiative
this wasn't
and the
part of
counter.
Settlement agreement. I heard this was part of a settlement.
It
I don't
was
know.
indirectly part of it.
Okay.
Putting the counter measure is part of the whole, the whole picture. I mean, I can't talk about what happened in a settlement agreement, but I can tell you that there is now, as a result of everything, there is a counter initiative.
Is the settlement agreement confidential? So-
Yes.
All right, so the voters can't.
Settlement agreement isn't, it's just
No.
how we got there.
Yeah, the negotiation.
Discussion. Yeah. Right. The agreement was,
The voters could read the agreement. And is it,
Right.
is it available on the city website?
Wasn't it published somewhere, Bruce, recently? Maybe Rusty knows. I thought it was. I thought it was published somewhere, like.
Jen said it was in the January 7th council packet
Yeah,
in the CVE item.
yeah.
what it is, though, it's not, it's just saying what the initiative, what the counter initiative is. In other words, the discussions that happened in the settlement agreement and how that ended up, we're not allowed to talk.
That's all.
But-
But I'm trying,
Okay.
I'm
The
just sitting.
settlement agreement
understand
does
the
not
Back and forth.
say anything about the initiative.
Okay, got it.
Right. Because it would be there regardless. Because if you have enough signatures, you can put an initiative on a ballot.
And I think, and you'd probably agree with me, that because the initial initiative was filed and it passed and it was going on the ballot, and because of the ambiguities, the city would have filed a counter initiative anyway, even if there wasn't anything else in play.
Right.
We would have had to.
And-
Right.
And that makes sense.
And, and at the, and I'm just going to kind of go out on a limb here. I've said it once publicly, and when we were at the retreat, and I will say it again, but I agree. I agree with you, Deb, and, anybody that had Lisa, that it is, the wording in both of the initiatives is hard to understand. Pardon me?
Open-ended.
Oh, there you go. Yes. And I said at the retreat, and I don't know if it's the right answer or the wrong answer, but maybe this is where we can all try and come together and vote a double no and leave everything the way that it is.
Do what exactly?
Voted no, double no,
Just double
on
no
both of them.
on
Is
both
that
of
what it
them.
should be?
and
I'm trying to figure out whether to vote yes or no or.
But to make
double.
it more, let me make it more complicated.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
My head is already like twisted.
What happens is you have two initiatives and you have two opportunities to vote. And then, I'm trying to differentiate between, all right, let's say that the one that was first filed by the citizens is A, and the one filed by the city, the countermeasure, is B. If you can vote yes on both measures, you don't go in and you don't vote once and say, this is where I want this to go. You have the opportunity to vote on two. And so when Deanna is saying, no, that means neither one would pass. But if you vote, it's possible that we might have 500 people say yes on one and 500 people say yes on the other. And so the way that it works out when you get down to, counting the votes and all, is if one has, and I'm not sure if the no's or the yes is the predominant, but I think it's going to be yes. The one that has the most yes votes is the one that would pass.
Whoa.
And so that's why, thank you for explaining that, Bruce, because
Did I explain it?
a really good job. And that's why so then I was saying, if we all came together and it would help, I think, stop some of this division because we would need to come together as a community to do it. If we've already got something that's in the ordinance, is it an ordinance on the initiatives? It was trying to change something that's already written. If we all voted no, on both initiatives, the way it's written currently at the city would remain the same.
Is that true? The city remains the same if we both vote no on both initiatives?
They both come out no, yes, that's correct.
That would
It
make,
stays the same.
yeah. Mhm.
I almost said if they both vote no, yes.
And if we voted no on the first initiative, A, and yes on the city initiative, it also would stay the same.
Well, it would change because the verbiage was changed.
Yeah, but it would essentially,
essentially it would-
essentially the same thing would be in effect in the city as it is now.
So, and that's
Right.
true.
Either
Or,
way,
you know, on
way.
the other side, on the Lois,
I didn't mean to interrupt you mid-sentence.
you are fine, please. You've had your hand up.
My mind was really clear 15 minutes ago. Now, oh my God, no kidding. But if I remember correctly, one of the big to-dos about the whole revamping of the school and the city hall and everything was people's fear that it would increase their property taxes.
I heard that.
When Necus is funded, as I understand it, solely from lodging taxes. Is it feasible to come to some kind of a compromise in how the city spends public money, tax money, versus all the other resources of money the city has, bonds, grants, lodging? There are several other sources of funds for the city. Is it possible, even feasible, to divide out where the city's funds come from? Because I don't think the public generally understands that. And then where those funds, what they're designated to be spent on.
That's in the city budget, which
How
is,
many people read the city budget?
well, I think there's.
But as information is being disseminated for this particular vote, I would think that that could be helpful information. If the public, the people that are opposed to spending this much money, could be assured that their taxes were not going to dramatically increase to be spent on this, that they could have some kind of input as to what their money going to the city gets spent on.
But a property tax increase isn't just something the city can just do.
No, I'm not saying that they
They have
can.
to vote
I'm
on
just
it
saying,
anyway, right?
It would have
Yeah.
to be a bond, yeah.
well, I'm just saying, if people could understand that if the city could give people assurance that there would be some input for what their personal property taxes are being spent on, and the rest of it goes to the council and they spend it how they see fit. Is that even feasible to divide out?
No,
Okay.
it's
well,
not.
I was afraid that was the answer, but.
Yeah, I mean,
Put it out there.
it just, money comes from all different places and the budget committee, when they meet, try and figure, and budget committees, the council is on the budget committee, but so are a lot of other people. So it's a fairly large group of people who try and figure out how the different pots of money that the city brings in will be spent. And it's all laid out by,
Are there people on this from this opposing group of people that are on that budget committee?
I don't know. Are there?
I don't think.
I mean, I don't know who all's, to tell you the truth, I don't know everybody who's in the opposing group.
Sure,
But,
sure.
but there's certainly, any of them are welcome to be on the budget committee. We had openings for the longest time and nobody stepped up to volunteer for months. So, finally, are we full now, Bruce?
I think we are.
Yeah.
Budget committee full
No,
now?
we just made another appointment.
Another what?
We just made another appointment.
So it is full now.
Yes.
Okay, but it took forever because, that's part of the problem is that, people want to complain about how things are done, but they don't want to get involved in trying to come up with solutions, like by being part of the city government or being part of a committee and voicing their opinions. And so that's
fair. It's fair. Everybody's afraid of their taxes going up. That's what I'm hearing, right? They're fearful and want to have some control over that.
Yeah, I think communication is everything. And if people felt like they had any kind of input about how their taxes get spent, that might help.
Well, I mean, it would have helped with, certainly would have helped with the school issue maybe, because I think there were still people who thought that maybe their tax dollars were being spent, were going to be spent on the Nakus project when actually it was funded through TLT tax. But, and there were those who did understand that and still didn't want it. So there were, it was all kinds of reasons why people voted it down. There's many, many reasons. Some people didn't want anything. Some people wanted a community center. Some people wanted a project that was smaller. There was a huge, large array of reasons why that failed. And not, not any one, now people are trying to say, well, it's because everyone wanted A or B or C. We don't know at this point what everyone wants. And we don't know what the majority wants out of Nakus, if anything, so.
Lisa, if I could just clarify too, the good thing about infrastructure loans and grants is because this is federal money, those monies can only be used for infrastructure. The city could not take that money and use it for some other project that they decide that they want to use those funds. And the incremental milestones that I was telling you about, it's not only the amount that we're able to keep up with the spending pace that the feds want to see as far as progress. We have to itemize every single thing that we're spending money on. And that goes to the federal agency that supplies that money to me. And if they see anything in those line items that isn't part of the scope, they push it back to us. So those are tracked down to the minute level. Even on the grant money, it's the same exact thing because it's all federal money. As far as the loans, these are 1% interest loans. Think about your mortgage. I don't know any of you sitting in this room that has a 1% interest rate on your mortgage. It also comes with a principal forgiveness, which means there is a percentage of money that does not have to be paid back. So if we get 5 million for something, there is a principal forgiveness that comes with that is taken off of that 5 million that we do not pay back. It's forgivable funds. So that along with 1%, you're not going to get money outside of a grant that's any more free to the city than that. That's why we've worked so hard to get this funding. So this is why infrastructure should be exempt from these type of things that go to the ballot for this reason. This money is very hard to get. It can only be used for your infrastructure, your safety, our community's betterment.
And it's federal money, you're saying?
It's federal money, whether it's coming from FEMA BRIC or it's coming from Business Oregon. They receive the money from the feds. It's for a specific purpose with specific qualifiers that come along with it. And if we qualify, the grant that we chased last year for 7 million that we did not get, we were one of the top 3 that went forward out of hundreds of municipalities in Oregon that chased that money. Our score was more than 90% in the qualifying factors to get that. Another city that got the funds instead of us, we were able to see their application. They had to rebuild their drinking water plant. They deserve that money. They were as in need of that money as we were. Was I disappointed we didn't get it? Of course. It took us months and months to chase this. The paperwork could wallpaper this city hall. And so they invited us to pin in for it again this year. That's what we're doing as I speak right now. So if this has to go to vote, I have to divulge that to the budget committee that I have to go in front of and pitch our project to them. I have to divulge that we could not start right away. They're going to read about it in the paper, so I can't hide that. And it's going to disqualify us.
Wow.
So.
Thanks, Karen.
I just did an article in Protect, and it says, so far, the total amounts come to, you were asking about the grants. The total amounts come to 9,775,000 with grants totaling 533,000 for a grand total that Public Works has done without increasing property taxes, $10.3 million. That's what she has done. Okay, so with her Public Works Department.
Team has done that.
Yeah, the team has done that. $10.3 million to the city and without increasing property taxes. I think everybody needs to wrap their head around that. Because people are saying, oh, we need to get rid of, these people. You don't need to get rid, please don't, because some people are doers and some people are talkers. I prefer the doers, okay? So $10.3 million for anybody with a business mind that's a doer.
Okay, thank you, Deb.
The leadership has approved that.
Yeah.
I couldn't chase these without taking it to council, without taking it to the budget committee and get their approval for me to pursue these loans. So
Right.
they approved it and I went after it, and that's.
Karen's done an incredible
Right,
job.
so we've got to stop this division and attacking people. I can't stand it anymore.
Deb, just one second. Darrell, you had a question about City Hall and police station.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that other people get to voice their questions.
Well, you won't be able to answer it because.
Oh, great.
But I do
Another thing I can't answer.
point out to you, closer to home, what happens with these projects. And that is, I'm a swimmer, and when the pool in Seaside is down, I will go to other places, and I would go down to Neoconi and, not Neoconi. Halem and swim. And so this is maybe close to 4 years ago. They were raising funds for their new swimming pool. Well, they, at that point, wanted to raise $4 million. Well, if you saw the papers here in the last few months, that project now is $12 million because of the delay. And the city council down there said, yes, they will pitch in another, I think, $1.5 million to complete the project. So these delays are astronomical in the end. Right?
It cost a lot of money.
They cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
When I worked for the Park Bureau in Portland, half of my years, I would submit a budget. And if we went over that, there was a slush fund and they could cover smaller amounts. But when I got ready to put in an automatic irrigation system, it took me years to get the money approved for that project.
And then it was more
So
expensive.
I mean, I literally think that last vote was just an awful step in the wrong direction, because it's going to cost you more and more money, as you say, just to even put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Thanks.
Yep.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Tulip, you wanted to say something, I think, about Nikus. You had a question
You've kind of already indirectly answered it.
by saying we don't know.
My concern was, I guess it dovetails into confusing ballot initiatives. I'm thinking from the last working council meeting I was at, and I didn't see him. My takeaway is the council didn't really know what they voted for. A member of the tribes came up and said, well, advisory, what's that really mean? It's just advisory, which was counter to what I'd been told. And I know we have two new councilors and their positions on Nikus were stated in the campaign. And maybe it's buried in these two poorly written initiatives nobody seems to understand that are coming up. So I was just curious if there is a status or not.
On Nikus, and there is not at this point. It's going to be discussed, and we are going to take it back to the community to try and determine what people want. Again, I mean, the first time, all the things we came up were based on community meetings. We're going to start again with more community meetings. As you know, I was always ambiguous about the school until I heard from the community. And what I heard at the meetings is they wanted this project. And so then I got on board because this is what people wanted. And it seemed like a great idea, and it seemed like an incredible project. But I didn't start from that point. I was convinced by listening to people speak, members of the community, not the council, but members of the community. Now we're going to start again. Members of the community are going to speak again, and we'll see where it goes. But at this point, we have no idea.
I guess the takeaway that I had in listening to members of the community, I think I came to one meeting on that and thought that this was a done deal. I personally voted for it because I was too far down the road to go start over again. But my takeaway is a small vocal part of the community that has a certain viewpoint that basically had the city council write a check, the voters said they couldn't cash. So I don't know how you correct that, getting the right involvement for what the city or what the community really wants.
It's going to be, it's a difficult process always. We're going to try, and that's all we can do is to try and figure out where to go next with it. But we'll go somewhere, well, there's a huge range of things that can happen with that project. Yeah.
So one part of my recollection of the retreat meetings were discussion about disseminating information, acquiring information, community interaction and communication.
Right.
And how to go about that. And so that we could, I learned a lot just sitting here today. I think we all learned a lot with the school project and what avenues we can take or not take and the ramifications of all those choices. And I think that is the most, whether groups are feeling heard, not heard, involved, not involved, I think we really need to look at a community as a community. How can we make sure that the telephone game that we're playing and information is getting dropped off and it's channeling through? How do we get the facts out there? No matter what side you perceive yourself or in the middle or wherever, what are the facts? And I don't have the answer to that, but I'm more than happy to try and come up with ideas.
Well, we're going to try to have a community bulletin.
Libby, gas.
A community bulletin. We're going to try for that.
You guys talked about the community.
Hire somebody to actually write it.
Yeah.
And we had one at one time, and we're looking for someone to do do it again. And that will help.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it doesn't even matter what facts you put out there. If somebody has a certain point of view, they don't really care. They want to listen to only things that conform with their point of view, but that's happening everywhere in the country right now. It's a national problem.
Yes.
And so,
that's where I ask the community to do your own due diligence, collect your facts. Ballot measures are atrocious enough. I mean,
oh my goodness.
I sit there through them and go, what? My head's spinning now.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't want to see the community more divisive. They're obviously people, a fraction or a portion are feeling not heard. So how do we make sure that they're heard or that they understand what they're what they're voting? Because all those no's did not mean the same thing.
Right.
Nor do they know the fallout of what that causes or, yeses. So I don't have the answers, but I don't know. I think the bulletin is a great start. Having discussions like this, you're not going to get everyone to walk into City Hall. So how can we have more community discussions? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I still don't understand what the reluctance is to walk into City Hall.
Well, you're sitting on the council, so obviously your reluctance level is a lot lower than most.
But I was not on the council for most
I know.
years I've been here.
I know.
So,
I'm not disagreeing, with that. I just think there's a majority, even though this is coffee with the councilors, I wonder if it was in a different venue, do you get?
yeah, maybe, I don't know.
I've heard a lot of people ask the same thing. I totally hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
It's
just,
more casual, so it's
Yeah.
easier to discuss
Yeah.
stuff where you can't do that at city council meetings. So
Yeah.
I think.
And you can have back and forth here, whereas you don't get that at a city council meeting in the
Yeah.
same way.
and
That's,
again, I think just walking through those doors, no fault to anyone in this building, it's just
Intimidating.
government intimidating kind of presence that some people aren't up for. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously I do it, you do it, we all are doing it, but I'm just trying to figure out how to get the most involved in the communication out there.
and one of the things I do want to say is though, the competing measure, it is confusing as well. But part of that is, it's not, we can't write it. You can't write those in plain English. You have to write them in legalese.
Yeah.
And they have to be written by an attorney who specializes in municipal law, et cetera, et cetera. I have as much trouble reading that competing measure as anyone in this room. And I'm an attorney.
Yeah.
So, really, I mean, I'm not a municipal attorney and I don't understand how that's, it's very difficult to understand.
Specialize in ambiguity.
Well, it's not even that. It's just that I guess it would have to be 20 pages long to cover all the possibilities or, so it is difficult for people to understand it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going. I'd love to avoid being in this position
Yeah,
on an ongoing basis.
yeah, no, I agree. And I'm,
I mean, again, whether you're on extreme sides or in the middle, I don't think anyone in the community wants to see this become a pattern.
right, but.
I hear you.
And I guess I don't know, I just wish people trusted the city more and,
Well, they're
Again, I think
being
it's about-
recorded and, it's intimidating for some people to speak out with being recorded and, there is a lot of fear. I hear it all the time. So, I think been having coffee at freaking the Wayfair like they used to.
people are afraid of sounding like they don't know something or, see, I've never cared if I sound stupid.
Well, and I'm not saying it has anything to do with the city. It could be any city hall building. It's gonna have people kind of go shy away or,
Care.
I think one of the underlying problems, the whole initiative process. And you said earlier, you don't like who's on the city council, vote them out, put somebody else in. I mean, I've lived in Washington, Oregon all my life. And you have initiatives that come out written by a vocal minority that get passed and they're legally challenged. Or something gets funded or approved and it goes to funding to a legislature, doesn't have the money to fund it or the enforcement to enforce it. So, my personal prejudice, the whole initiative process is flawed. And I believe in a Republican form of government where you vote for representatives and then they do your job. If you don't like them, throw them out.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
We got what we got.
One last thing, what I heard with Nakus, and I got because I have to write about this. I've heard the Cannon Beach Together now supports renovating the old school. After we went through all of that, they were supporting it again, but they wanted $8 million. And I'm wondering, is that a realistic figure? Because the price is going to go up. And by the time I've got 5 different reasons why some just want to tear it down, want to park, some want something comparable to the North Coast Land Conservancy in Seaside, but it was built without having to renovate a very complicated building. Others would like minor safety upgrades and just have a community center, and no one knows how that will be funded. Some want a cultural center for the Clatsop Nahum tribe, which I think is unanimous. In fact, anyway, I totally support that. And 40% of voters supported the proposed plan for the new Coos program, as the city proposed. So how will we come to an agreement? How long will that take? And how will that 8 million not turn into easily 12 million And we've all done this whole dance for a lot of energy and time. I mean, this is like a lot of like, and division and messengers of misinformation that were really spread with this thing. This thing was really misinformed when I look at all the facts.
Well, that's
So-
one of the beauties of a democracy. I really, I mean it.
It's so-
It is. Well, it's not always fun, but it's better than anything else. Is there anyone else who hasn't gotten to speak at all? Who would like to say something on either online or in person here? Because this is conversations, anything?
A democracy only works if it's based on truth and fact.
Well, that certainly helps. That's right.
Facts.
But, I think people have I believe that people have a responsibility to inform themselves. I think that you can't, you can't go to your neighbor and have them inform you. You need to find out for yourself. And one of the ways is that's why we record this, which is intimidating to some people, but it makes it possible for anybody in this community to go back and listen to everything that was said and make their own decisions on what the conversation, what their takeaway from the conversation is. So the recording is great. That's part of what makes us a democracy. So anyway, thank you, everybody. No, I wanted to tell you. So the next meeting is on February 24th, which is still a Monday, at 10 o'clock. It's the 24th, right, Rusty?
Yes.
24th, because there's a holiday on the third Monday of the month. And then, starting in March, we're going to be on the first Wednesday of every month, the first Wednesday at 10 o'clock. So it's exactly the same as this, except it's a Wednesday, and it's the first Wednesday. So we actually are going to have a meeting the first Wednesday in March, which will just be a week after the fourth Monday in February. But we're going to do it anyway. And that way, we can have further discussion. I think this has been great. I'm really glad that people spoke up and, and I wish we could have more people involved in these discussions and then,
Still here, though.
yeah, still here. There's nowhere else to go. I mean, we have to have the equipment.
Something.
Well, no, we have to have the equipment to record things. We have to have, we have city staff who have to run back to their normal jobs as soon as this is over. And so for them to have to trek over to another location makes things really difficult.
And this building is under construction. We'll probably have to meet over at the chamber.
Yeah, at that
something like
time.
that.
So maybe that'll bring more people in. I don't know. And when we have Daniel here, our enforcement officer, mountain man enforcement officer. Mountain man. So,
Very intimidating, I have to say.
so, he's available for questions from people who have, things that are bothering, enforcement issues that are bothering him, which is great. So that's why we have it here, because we have all these people who are also running back to their regular jobs, the rest of their job, as soon as this is over.
Well, thanks for listening, and I love two-way conversations.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear everybody's opinions.
Yeah. So see you on the 24th.
Thank you.
And
Roast you.